I want to turn firstly to the recent HIQA report that we've had in relation to Dublin North City. And I was concerned in reading the child protection issues raised in this report, given this is a regulated setting, which would make you wonder what happens in settings that aren't regulated. And I think it's important to just note some of the points that were made in this report. So the review of case files showed that overall child protection and welfare service provided to children were not safe, adequate or timely. For some children, over 6 months passed before any action was taken with regard to safeguarding risk that had been identified. Others remained allocated to staff who were on extended statutory leave and received no contact from child protection and welfare staff. One example was a child with a disability who was non-verbal, who was waiting completion of a preliminary inquiry and safety planning for over 2 months. I have to say it reminded me of the Grace case. Some children were allocated to workers who did not have child protection and welfare training or experience. There was poor governance and oversight of the service at all management levels. It was of significant concern, given the significant risks identified in the April 2024 inspection, that the self-assessment questionnaire returned by the provider in advance of the inspection had deemed that the service area were substantially compliant with 4 capacity and capability standards assessed, and it was found, of course, they weren't compliant at all, yet they essentially said they were and they weren't. Really concerning. Significant number of children in terms of the front door then. Some of these referrals were found to be waiting over 6 months to be screened, when TUSLA's own requirement is that referrals are screened within 24 hours. This meant that these referrals had not been reviewed by a social worker to determine if the child was at immediate risk of harm, and if needed, immediate safeguarding action was not taken. This report is really concerning, and as I said, this is a regulated environment, and the fact that HIQA were misled in terms of the self-assessment sent back by the provider to say, yes, we're compliant in 4 of the 5 areas, and they weren't at all, is concerning as well. Now, I know steps have been taken, but clearly not quickly enough, and I would imagine a number of children were failed in terms of the service provided here, and I just wonder if you can give us any reassurance in relation to this. As I said, this is just one setting, and then that leads me to the special arrangements, and if you could maybe give us a bit more information on where these settings are, how often they're used, and then in terms of regulation and inspection, which I presume is non-existent. Thank you.
I might start off, and Jerry maybe might talk in some more detail to the DNC, but I think it is important to say, so just to say, first of all, we fully accept the findings of the HIQA report. I think one of the really important mechanisms that we have available to us is that external oversight from HIQA. I think if you look within that month that the DNC report was published, there were other reports published in Dublin and in Donegal and in other parts of Dublin that were substantially compliant or fully compliant. But we absolutely recognise a challenge within the whole of the Dublin North East region, not just Dublin North City, in terms of resources. What HIQA will talk about is, with the limited resources that are available, we are responding to those who are at highest risk or greatest need. And I think we've been very open, and I certainly have been open in the fact that we are not getting to all of the children that we would want to get to in the way we want to get to them. There's a significant number of vacancies in that region, but it also did show up challenges in relation to governance and in relation to oversight, which have been dealt with. And when I referred in my opening statement to the restructuring and the new changes that are coming in line in the 1st of January, one of the things that has been, historically in TUSLA, a legacy piece, is that the way in which services have been, established in terms of the size of those services, the demand for those services, the resources, has been very inequitable. From the 1st of January, the regions are being realigned. There are new geographical boundaries coming in, and what we're going to end up with is 6 regions with 30 networks of almost equal size in terms of demand and capacity. So that will help us address some of the resourcing issues that are in place in that area. Jerry can certainly talk to you about any of the specific findings or what we've done to address those.
Yes, Deputy, and thanks for your question. Yeah, and I think as Kate has pointed out, that particular area is one of the areas that probably has some of the highest need and highest deprivation in the country, and it's one of our largest areas as well. And it is around the Dublin area, we really struggle most to recruit social workers and social care staff. And when you look into the background of this particular inspection and what was happening in that particular area, the existing staff were extremely busy, but dealing with high levels of vacancies. Yeah. And what was actually missing in that particular system, when you're so busy, governance can slide quite quickly. And when we examined externally what was going on, that was what we found. And we had to take immediate steps to strengthen governance arrangements within that particular area. And the regional chief officer, along with the area managers and PSWs, have been meeting weekly to actually improve the service in that particular area, and we have made great strides at the moment in terms of the action plan that was presented to HIQA, and we're updating that for HIQA as we speak. I think the importance of HIQA coming in and examining us externally like that gives us a great opportunity to actually improve our services every time.
Okay,
and that's followed through.
Yeah. But just to make the point in terms of the highest risk being dealt with, like if the screening hasn't been done at the front door for 6 months, you don't know what the level of risk is. And there are examples of a child where there's an allegation of physical abuse waiting screening for over 4 weeks, yes, and how that could have escalated, and God only knows where it ended up for 4
yes.
weeks. So it's not so much governance which is of concern, but it's the children and the suffering they experience when they're not dealt with. Thank you.